We're the House Republican Caucus. Everyone that can be here today is here. The members that aren't here fully support our call today. We have asked for months, probably over a month and a half, for this building to get back to work, for the General Assembly to get back to work, at the very least, for our House Oversight to fulfill its constitutional oversight function. It has failed. We've gone through the proper channels. We've petitioned the Speaker of the House. We've been rebuffed. We've petitioned the Chair of House Oversight, Patricia Serpa. We've been rebuffed. Instead, they created a non-existent legal entity called the COVID-19 Task Force with no legal authority. It met once, almost a month ago, and that is deemed the replacement for the proper constitutional oversight function of the House. That is unacceptable. We are facing a crisis in this state that is affecting the most vulnerable amongst us, and that is our seniors in our nursing homes. 75%, approximately 75% of all COVID-19 related deaths are in our nursing homes and assisted living facilities. This building, this legislature has to figure out what happened, what is happening now to fix it, and what will we do in the future to prevent this from happening again in the event of a resurgence. Because our calls have fallen on deaf ears, today we are calling upon the members of House Oversight Committee to convene without the Speaker's permission and without Chair Serpa's permission. Pursuant to our state constitution and our House rules and Mason's Rules of Order, a majority of this committee can convene and exercise the House's constitutional oversight function, and that's what we're demanding. We've dug a lot into the nursing home crisis, and a lot of the information we have is just frankly scary for Rhode Island families. This body has a duty to get to the bottom of it, and it is failing its duty now. We call upon our members on House Oversight, our Democratic colleagues, to lead, because you're needed now more than most. I'm going to turn it over to Whip Chippendale at this time, who's going to speak about the nursing home crisis we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize for a little bit out of breath. Throughout this entire crisis, we've been learning things every day, new things, different things. Things have been changing every day. It's very difficult for anyone who's trying to deal with something of this magnitude to be able to dance and maneuver as quickly as these changes are presented. So that challenge does not go unnoticed by anyone. I am among the longest serving members of the House Oversight Committee, currently on that committee. Rep. Serpa and I have been on that committee since 2013. And I just want to reflect back on what we've done in House Oversight. In 2016, in a very extraordinary move, in October of an election year nonetheless, House Oversight was called to convene jointly with House Finance because the UHIP situation had started to run into some cost overruns that folks, frankly and rightfully so, felt were an issue. One of the opening statements in that 2016 oversight hearing was about the impact this UHIP fiasco was having on nursing homes. It's not something we don't think about. Since that 2016 meeting, we've covered things like UHIP. Our most vulnerable population is being affected by that. MTM, our most vulnerable. FNS, our most vulnerable. DCYF, our most vulnerable. We have been overseeing the actions of this administration since 2016. And we've been doing so effectively, appropriately, and responsibly. We know now, and we knew at the beginning, the epicenter of this outbreak is and has been congregate settings, nursing homes, long-term care facilities. today there is at least one update from the administration. There have been 16 news reports covering the impact on nursing homes. I don't think that's enough, and I don't think that's the media's fault. I think it's because we are not being given information at the press briefings. We're given numbers. But as a person who has had to, as part of my responsibility on oversight, read the Child Advocate's report in excruciating detail on how a young child died under negligent care, it's heartbreaking. If you have a heart, it tears it out of your chest. And we have upwards of 550 seniors who have died in these congregate settings from COVID-19 right now. And each of them have a story equally as heart-wrenching as those children in the Child Advocate's report. But we don't hear about them. We just hear about the numbers. From my perspective, again, on oversight and knowing what we do and what we've done as it pertains to the administration and the administration's actions, I feel comfortable stating that this administration has failed our most vulnerable elderly population in the state of Rhode Island. Dramatically failed them. We have a Kafkaesque system where elderly are put into homes, their families cannot visit them, they cannot hold their loved one's hands when they die. Can you imagine that? Who among us hasn't had a loved one in a nursing home? Can you imagine that? The issues that have led to this must be explored by House Oversight. It's an obligation, it's our responsibility, it's our duty. We've proven, it's been demonstrated that bodies can meet safely and make decisions safely right now. There is no reason that House Oversight is not doing what it's doing or what it should be doing. The types of things that I would want to know if I were asking the questions of the administration and those called before House Oversight would be the same questions we ask about all of the other tragedies that are happening under the misguidance of this administration, whether it's children or whether it's medical transport services. Regardless, we need to ask the same. What are you doing now? Why isn't it working? What are you planning to do in the future? And in this particular situation, when we're dealing with a global pandemic, the closest thing we can reflect back on being the 1918 influenza outbreak. The leading health experts are telling us this will come back in the fall. This will come back in the fall. And if it even remotely looks like the influenza of 1918, it's going to come back worse. So I would be asking questions about that. What are we doing to prepare for that inevitability? Why has it gotten to this point, and why hasn't it been addressed properly by this administration? And why is House Oversight sitting on the sidelines? We should be ashamed. I am ashamed of House Oversight as the longest serving member on that committee. I am ashamed that we have done nothing. And I hope my colleagues feel that shame as well, because it belongs to us and only us. We need to convene, however we have to do that, whether it's through extraordinary circumstances or through the proper channels or the regular channels. We have to meet, we have to ask these questions. People are dying and we are not doing what needs to be done. If this doesn't warrant action, I frankly don't know what will. And at this point, I'm going to yield back. Yield to my colleague, Jack Lyle.
Thank you, Chip. I wish I could say that I'm here this afternoon as a member of the COVID-19 task force and reporting out all of our wonderful findings. Unfortunately, as you know, we only met once. It was a dog and pony show, and we have not resumed our deliberations. Instead, I'm here to talk just briefly about what could be billed a tale of two cities, or in this case, a tale of two loving mothers. My mother, Lois Lyle, about 8 years ago, our family decided that the time had come for her to go into a memory care program. And there she was the mayor of that facility for a few years, and we saw a steady and slow decline. About 1.5 years ago, we made the decision to move my mother into a nursing home in the town of Lincoln. Unfortunately, my mother is in a bit of a catatonic state. Is not conversive, tends to know when we're there, but generally is not experiencing or enjoying a high quality of life. There has been repeated testing at the facility that she has been at. I'm happy to report that no patient and no staff member has tested positive in that facility. I'll contrast that with my wife's mother, Eleanor Martin. Mrs. Martin was placed in an assisted living facility because we had noticed that her quality of life had diminished, and in that assisted living facility she seemed to thrive up until January, when she managed to escape a couple of times in the middle of the night. And at that point, we, along with the facility, recognized the fact that she needed more aggressive care, and she was transferred within that facility into a unit that was more appropriate to her needs. About 10 days ago, on Saturday afternoon, we received a call from the facility, and we were informed that my mother-in-law had tested positive for COVID-19. Her condition diminished so quickly that on Monday, the facility recommended that she either be moved to a hospital or placed under hospice care. On Wednesday, my wife received a call that her mother had passed. My wife and my daughter, along with me, mourned the fact that we did not have an opportunity to be with her, to share with her some of our joys, that our only contact with her over these past now almost 3 months has been through Skype. And thank goodness for that. There was a nurse who was doing that on a regular basis, to such an extent that my daughter was even able to put on a bit of a violin concert for some of my mother's roommates. We've got to do something about this situation. It is not right that families endure the kind of pain and suffering that my family has endured as a result of the fact that this crisis has been handled so poorly. We're seeing resources available in some facilities and not in others. In the facility that my mother-in-law is at, which is a high-class operation, one of the nurses was complaining to my wife just a couple of weeks ago that they only had recently received the kind of protective gear that they needed in order to maintain their quality of life. As my leader has said, it is long overdue that the House Oversight Committee take on the challenge of figuring out what has gone wrong so that we don't make these mistakes again in the future. Thank you for being here this afternoon on this gorgeous day. I only wish there's so many others who are confined to nursing homes now can enjoy the same kind of beautiful day. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the press, for coming here today. My name is Representative David Place to represent Borough and Gloucester. For Borough and Gloucester, we got, just like every other district in this state, we've got a large concentration of nursing homes. And since the beginning of this whole thing back in March, we sat inside this building and we observed when the first outbreak took place out in Washington State And we saw the first place where there was a concentration of fatalities due to this virus was in a nursing home. And as that continued, you saw Italy, all of a sudden, Italy starts to spark up as well. And you see in Italy, you see the nursing homes. And it's taking place in the nursing homes. So as time goes on, we sit back, we come out of session, and just like you, every single week we've sat back and looked at the reports, every single day the reports that the Governor of the Department of Health have put out. And you see this number slowly increase, the age and the location where these people are passing away. So as we're seeing this, as a caucus, as we're seeing this in the data, we start hearing from our constituents, from family members that have people have family members, have their family in the homes, and for people that work at these homes. Personally, I've talked to 4 different people in 4 different facilities that do 4 different jobs. And at all levels, they're just baffled because they just don't know what to do next because there's no guidance coming from the top. And I'm not standing here right now saying that the state isn't doing something. I'm just reporting what they're telling me. And when there's a conflict between what the executive branch is telling us on a regular basis, and there's a conflict between what our constituents and people in these homes are saying on a regular basis, what's really going on. And the only way to resolve that conflict is for the legislative branch to do its oversight, to come in and conduct hearings. Because everybody else has said, we all know in the fall, this is going to come back. And we need to identify the things that have been done right in facilities and things that have been done wrong. You know, like Representative Lyle, he represented 2 facilities, one where his mother is and one where his mother-in-law was. And in my district, you've got Zambrano Hospital, where you have the epitome of the patient, the at-risk patient. And the last time I spoke to that facility, they had almost no instances of COVID in that facility. And then you look at different nursing homes throughout the community, and you see the spark-ups. What is the difference? What is going on at one facility that's not going on at the other? And I think that's something, and that's what this caucus is calling for, that we need to ask. We need to make sure that the executive branch is doing its due diligence, because the people that are in this field, that are doing the work, are telling us they're not getting guidance. That when they go on a call every Wednesday, they get guidance from the Department of Health, and 15 minutes later the governor comes up on TV and says something 180 to what they just heard on the conference call. That breeds fear amongst them. They start to doubt what goes on inside their facilities. They doubt the guidance they're getting from the Department of Health. And we're calling on House Oversight to take up the call of not just their duty, but the constituents. Their constituents and the people in these homes are asking us to do work. That's what we need to do. We need to do some work. So as things go on, I think we can open it up for questions now. If anybody's got questions to me before I step away, that way we don't have the shuffling around.
With Chippendale, you say you believe the administration has failed. What do you believe the administration should have done differently?
Thank you, Ian. First, I think that communication is always key. Again, we get numbers. It wasn't from the beginning that it was broken down and parsed out so we could determine which homes, which demographics, etc. But when we get those data and then we do not get data on the steps that are being taken, the needs that may be there, there's no asks being made that we know of, or that I believe the media knows of, because it doesn't get addressed at the press conferences. At the end of the day, you know, I could cheaply say the buck stops at the top, right? But right now, the administration is making every step of the way, making the rules and the regs for it. There is no, despite what you may have heard on the radio this morning, there is no General Assembly participation in the process. There is a member of the General Assembly participating, for certain. But the General Assembly plays a role, and we have been doing this for the past 6 years on all issues relating to our vulnerable populations and how, frankly, this administration's actions have harmed them. Why aren't we doing it here? When we hear about, and Rep. Place touched on, the lack of PPE or the lack of directives and the various contradictions in today's order versus yesterday's, or what you heard an hour ago, that is a failure of communication, which frankly, as an aside, for an administration that has about 350 PR people on their payroll, they should be able to at least communicate. My constituents, and I'm sure all of my 74 colleagues in the House can say the same thing, are reaching out to me because they are scared. They have elderly in their family. They have those who may otherwise need to be in a congregate setting in their family, and they view them almost as dens of death because they don't know what's going on. When this first started, a crisis manager, I think from Katrina, had spoken out about the best way to deal with crises, and the first thing was to be open, transparent, and to communicate everything. And that isn't happening right now. And that does not inspire confidence in anyone. Never mind the person who is seriously considering, do I put Dad in that home? What do I do with I can't afford a nurse at home? What do I do? We need to address this. The silence is deafening, and it's painful. Did I address your question succinctly, because I went all over the place on that?
You did.
Okay.
It sounds like you're saying more than finding a specific fault with the administration and its approach. You're saying House Oversight has a role, the legislature has a role. That's what this is more about, checks and balances, more than specific lack of action by the administration.
Yeah, I mean, the checks and balances message we've been, I think, communicating very well through the leader and the caucus right from the get-go. But in this particular case, yeah, the check and balance would be good. But what we've seen in the past 6 years in House Oversight is the questions asked and the things demanded from the administration by House Oversight have actually bent the trajectory of what the administration's doing, and in a lot of cases in a favorable direction. And that's what transparency does. That's what daylight does. It causes you to correct your action if you're out in full sunlight and you're not on the right path. That's the role that oversight, or that's the main benefit, in my opinion, that oversight brings to any sort of an oversight hearing, is we are overseeing the process and we're shining a light on it, and we want to know what's going on.
Whip Chippendale, you mentioned that there's a chance for extraordinary circumstances. Can you sort of explain how the General Assembly can resume any sort of active session without permission for the Speaker and the Senate President?
I'm going to let my my learned colleague, who is an attorney, I am not, more specifically answer that, Mr. Bartholomew.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Bartholomew, thank you. I'll just refer you to Supreme Court precedent, specifically a 1939 case called Two Certain Members of the House of Representatives. And our Supreme Court says our fundamental law is majority rule. And if a majority of this body gets together, even if the Speaker doesn't show up, it's a meeting of the House of Representatives. That carries down to our individual committees. It's not contradicted by any House rule. If you look at our House rules, it permits a chairperson to call a meeting. It doesn't say a meeting of a committee can only be called by a chairperson. We look to Masons, which governs when our rules don't deal with something, and Masons is specific. Where the chair of a committee does not call a meeting or neglects their duty to call a meeting, a majority of the committee can meet, and it is a formal meeting. And that's what we're calling for. It is our reasoned position that the Speaker has let down his duty, as has the chair of our House Oversight Committee. In the face of that dereliction of duty, it's the responsibility of the members of this committee to get together and do their job. 17 members are on House Oversight, a quorum is 9. You already have 2, in Whip Chippendale and Brian Newberry. We need 7 more Democrats to say, you know what, we're gonna meet. I'm gonna be willing to go against leadership during this crisis
because our grandparents, our parents are dying in nursing homes. And the governor might be doing everything right. She might be doing everything right. The fact is, you don't know, we don't know, the public doesn't know, and that's the purpose of House Oversight. After a House Oversight hearing, we may say, my goodness, Gina Raimondo did the best possible job she could have, nothing was wrong. We just don't know. Constituents call me and say, what's going on? Do you have any idea what it's like to say to someone whose parents are in a nursing home? I have no idea. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. So, we need 7 more Democrats. Patricia Serpa, Raymond Johnson, Julie Casimiro, Edie Agello, John Edwards, Arthur Handy, Brian Patrick Kennedy, Jason Knight, Charlene Lima, Daniel McKiernan, Thomas Norray, Scott Slater, Joe Solomon, June Speakman, Anastasia Williams. We only need 7 of you to show up. We only need 7 of you to show up. It's time to lead. Because those we have chosen to lead our body are not. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry. So we've been going through the proper channels. 6 weeks ago, we asked the Speaker. 4 weeks ago, we asked the Chair. We have heard from our Democratic colleagues saying, yes, they want to meet. I'm not going to say who. These are internal conversations which wouldn't happen if they're always leaked to the press. But our members do want to meet. It's not a question of their desire, it's a question of their will. Are they willing now to take on the leadership that has stayed home, that has kept this body off the field? It's not a question of desire. Do they have the guts? That's the question.
Rep, a lot of those people you mentioned said that Speaker Mattiello will not let them leave, and he's content with the General Assembly not to come back in session. He wants to remain under the radar.
You know, that 1939 case I just cited, and I'll paraphrase them, they say the Speaker's not the master, the Speaker's the servant. And if he fails to remember that principle, he loses all respect that he is due. He does not control this body. He only has what this body gives to him. The majority of this body is in control. The majority of this committee is in control. And they need to start doing their jobs and not blaming the speakers and transients. When their constituents call them and ask, from this point forward, they can't say the Speaker won't let me. It is fact, it is law. The Supreme Court has said it is our fundamental law that the majority of this body rules. And they need to start doing it.
What's your reaction to finance saying there's no plan B? They were just relying on government money to bail out the state.
You know, here we're focused, the House Finance Committee is meeting, right? Everyone's in the room, it's not a problem. Our position is it's not just about the money. The people that have died are not numbers on a spreadsheet. House Finance certainly can meet as they should. Our House Oversight needs to meet. It can meet. There's no plan B. We're here to talk about our seniors. If there is no plan B, they need to start cutting. But we're not here to talk about financial issues. It's a calamity, and I'm glad House Oversight Finance is meeting as it should. This call is for House Oversight to start doing their job.
What is the state's plan with the nursing homes for the second wave that's going to hit the fall? What is the state going to do differently to avoid 80% of the deaths in nursing homes?
John, the point is we have no idea, and neither do you. And that's the point of House Oversight, is House Oversight needs to meet. We need to know what's going on. The press needs to know what's going on, and the public needs to know what's going on, because I get calls every day. They are concerned. They were willing to stay home and dump all the responsibility onto the executive branch when this first went down, as was I, because it was an emergency. We didn't know enough. And people were willing. People are not willing anymore to just take the governor's word for all of these things that are happening. It's just not the way our government is set up. I think the governor's a great person, and I think she does a good job. But I need to know the facts. And we're not being given the facts, and that has to change.
Ian, I want to come back to your question that you asked the whip, because the question, what is it the governor hasn't done? And the questions the people that I'm talking to are asking, again, these are questions we want asked, and we want oversight to come up with answers. One, why is it that once the data showed that the most vulnerable people, the people in these nursing homes were the ones dying at a higher rate, why wasn't there an effort to get PP&E directly to them. When they put into the dashboard they said that they were short PP&E, that the Department of Health asked them that they're critical on PP&E. Why was it that nothing happened? Why is it that PPE didn't get to them? Why is it that some group homes, some facilities were getting PP&E but others weren't? Why is it that doctors in some hospitals can prescribe certain treatments for this, but doctors in others can't? Why is it that the doctors in the hospitals can, but comparable professionals in the nursing homes where they are, so there's no requirement to transport these people back and forth, why is it that those doctors, the ones that know these patients day to day, can't prescribe those exact same treatments? When this whole thing started, they told them, hey, don't transport anybody who might have this to the hospital. I guess for a pretty good reason, because they don't want to overwhelm the hospitals. But as time went on, nothing was going on. Now all of a sudden, oh, you have to transport them. And they're not giving the doctors at the homes the ability to treat their patients. Instead, they want to risk transporting the patient from what's potentially a clean environment to a hospital and then back again. Again, putting the patient at risk. And these aren't my questions. These are the questions, these are the comments we're getting from people that are doing this every single day. You got to remember, the people that work in these homes, these patients, they're not their patients. It's their families. Day after day, they've gotten to know these people. This is their families that they're seeing succumbing to this disease. And they're frustrated for the lack of guidance coming from the top. And our constituents and the people in the field want to know why. Where is the disconnect between what they're seeing and know that needs to happen and what the Department of Health is allowing them to do? Why is that disconnect? If there's a reason, that's fine. But the only way it appears we're going to find out, we have to convene House Oversight. We have to bring people in to testify, not only to collaborate what the people that are reaching out to us to saying, but also give the administration the opportunity to report what's going on.
Rep, can you touch on the average age of Rhode Island is 81 that is dying? It's actually older than life expectancy.
Well,
Hold on, not one child has died. Why is youth sports canceled for the summer?
Well, I don't know. I can go to the numbers. The numbers are, if you are 60 and over, 92% of the people that have succumbed to this are 60 and over. If you come into 50, it's 96%. So 50 and over, 96% of people have succumbed. 96% of people who succumb to this are 50 and over. That tells you the lethality of this. Again, I couldn't ask you. I'd like to know. I'd like to know why is it just based on these numbers that they're not allowing youth sports to happen.
And I'll add to that, John. That we put out a letter with 24. We put out a letter with 24 items that House Oversight needs to look at, including those designations. But right now, the crisis is in our nursing homes. We would like House Oversight to meet daily to deal with everything. But the first thing we got to deal with is our nursing homes. All of these other issues, from essential business designations to PPE, are things that we've also asked for. But the crisis in our nursing homes has to be dealt with now.
Leader, we've also got 26% testing rates in Central Falls. You can go back to the closure of Memorial Hospital. There are two battlefronts that are blowing up in this crisis here in Rhode Island. What will you do to address the urban core issues in oversight?
Talk about them, right? Figure out plans. Ask the administration what their plan is to deal with our minority communities. How are we communicating to our minority communities? We weren't at first. And guess what? A lot of those minority communities work in our nursing homes. So if we weren't communicating to them and they weren't getting the proper information about how to protect themselves and others, then they're going to work in our nursing homes. So yeah, I want to talk about what's going on in Central Falls and Providence. It needs to. And guess what? A lot of these congregate care facilities where the deaths have happened, predominantly they're poor people. Predominantly they're poor people that are dying. So we need to have these conversations. We don't need to be afraid of them. We don't want to Monday morning quarterback anybody, but the goal is to have open conversations. Educate ourselves and the public about what's happening. And the disproportionate effect on the minority communities is certainly one of the top things that we need to discuss in this office.
Leader, when this first started,
Hold on one second.
just a quick question for Leader Flippy. When this first started, New Rochelle, New York was deemed a hotspot, and they were enclosed and all residents kept inside. Why not a discussion if Central Falls is 1 mile long, 26% Why not a discussion to make that a hotspot and all residents of Central Falls must stay in Central Falls?
We have constitutional rights that I am not about to take from people absent compelling evidence. I haven't seen that evidence. One of the purposes of House Oversight is to find out what's going on out there, what kind of data we're getting in, what the plans are to protect people. Like, could that be reasonable? Potentially. I just don't know. But for us to lock down people in their homes, it's taking away a fundamental constitutional right, and it should only happen if it's absolutely compelling and necessary.
But are we doing that already with the quarantine and the stay-at-home order? Haven't we done that already? Why not focus on designated areas that have the outbreak? Block Island does not have a big outbreak. If the virus doesn't travel out there, there's no outbreak on Block Island. Why punish Block Island because there's an outbreak in Central Falls?
Listen, I get it. We've been opening up the state. Block Island, we are slowly opening up. Could there be a reasonable basis to do it? Maybe. I don't know the data, but I won't do it unless it's compelling and imminent threat to life and injury of other people. You cannot shut down people. You cannot force people into their homes and quarantine them in geographical areas unless it is compelling and imminent threat to life. You just can't. Not in this country. They want to pull that crap in China, go for it. Not here.
And Bill, I'd like to kind of follow up with what Leader Filippi said in response to your question. There is tremendous overlap. One only needs to look at the data, and those data show us there's a tremendous overlap with this congregate setting death number and disadvantaged communities, low-income communities, immigrant communities. There is a direct correlation. We're seeing now, yesterday I believe it was, where it's been announced that we are going to loosen and expedite licenses for CNAs. I'm here to tell you right now there are a whole lot of CNAs right now sitting at home because they've been told not to show up at work. Some of them are in my family. We don't need to expedite licenses for people who may not be qualified to do the job. That's asking for more of a problem. We need to take this seriously regardless of what neighborhood it's occurring in. Regardless, I mean, if person A can say, all right, I'm taking dad out of this home because all I gotta do is write a check and put him in a private facility, that's great. Or person B who's on Medicaid, they don't have that option. Dad's there, and all I can do is look on this stupid phone and talk to dad who spent 90% of his life without a phone and doesn't know what he's dealing with. This is absurd. It's absurd that we can go through drive-thrus and get our coffees in Walmart and get our mulch at Home Depot and we can stand in line 6 feet apart, but I can't hold my mother's hand when she dies. And I apologize for raising my voice. It's just beyond comprehension to me, Bill. And yes, it is directly impacting the more disadvantaged communities, and that is clear by the data.
Does anybody else want to say something? Please, Sean.
I'd just like to say one thing. We were not elected to cower in the face of crisis, so I just want to urge my colleagues to please do their job, stand up in the face of it instead. The people who voted for us, at least they deserve some answers. At the very least, they had confidence in us. We can't be cowards. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? We put forth multiple plans. We said let's do it through Zoom. We said let's do it at the convention center or the vets. We've put forward plans. We can meet in the chamber with the 17 members of House Oversight Committee and maintain proper social distance. The issue is not how it can be done. The issue is not should it be done. As I said before, the issue is the will of people to get it done. We can get this done safely. So don't let them give any excuses, social distance, all the garbage they pulled a month ago when we first called for this. Don't let them pull that. So we gave you the 17 names. Please, ask them. Are they willing to do what they were elected to do and make a hard stand? And if they're not willing to do it now, they'll never be.